Welcome to the newest episode of Beatin' and Bangin'. I'm your host, Kyle Dalton. In today's video, we're going to recap the wild weekend at the Charlotte Roval, including some spicy Kyle Busch team radio and the specific driver his team wasn't happy with in practice. Plus, Martin Truex Jr. once again reminding us that he's ready to retire, an Xfinity Series race that ended in a cloud of controversy with Parker Kligerman getting the bad end of the deal, and of course, Sunday's Cup Series race that included more controversy during the race and a disqualification after. However, before we get to our first story, I just wanted to give a quick shout out to the fine folks at Raising Cane's. I told you guys about my trip a few weeks ago to Cancun, where we got to experience a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity and hang out on the beach with Snoop Dogg playing a private concert, all courtesy of Raising Cane's. But to be honest, I've had Raising Cane's on the mind multiple times since then. A, because I love their food, and B, because it's literally the closest restaurant to my house. So I've stopped by on a few occasions over the last several weeks and picked up some delicious food for me and my wife. My go-to is always the 3-finger combo because it's just the right amount of food and it includes their delicious Texas toast, crinkle fries, and of course their special dipping sauce. My mouth is watering just thinking about it. Anyway, I just want to again thank Cane's for that incredible trip to Cancun and for making the best chicken finger meals in my area, bar none. All right, now that I've worked up my appetite, it's time to move on to the first story of the day, and it comes from the Xfinity Series practice and qualifying on Saturday at the Charlotte Roval. During the broadcast, the booth was talking about different playoff drivers and what they needed to do to advance to the next round. When Riley Herbst's name came up, I found it interesting what Jeff Burton had to say about the Stewart-Haas Racing driver.
And the same goes for this young driver, Riley Herbst. I think the most improved driver in NASCAR's top 3 series over the last couple years. A lot of coaching for him today as well.
The most improved driver that doesn't have a ride for 2025, with the rebranded Haas factory team already announcing next year's Xfinity roster of Sam Mayer and Sheldon Creed. Herbst has been linked to a potential third 2311 racing car, but acknowledged on Playoff Media Day at the end of September nothing had been confirmed, and he was quote-unquote not confident by any means. All the legal dealings going on with 2311 Racing is surely the holdup, and I think he lands a deal there for 2025. But in this sport, you just never know, so we'll have to wait and see what happens. Moving on to Cup Series practice and qualifying, there were a couple things that got my attention, starting with the practice run of Kyle Busch. While making laps around the track, and Chase Briscoe in particular, the number 8 team radio didn't sugarcoat how they felt about the SHR driver.
What a dick. All clear. The 14 have a hard-on for us, or what? I don't see why we're getting screwed by him so often lately. I don't know.
The other comment worth mentioning came courtesy of Busch's former Joe Gibbs Racing teammate, Martin Truex Jr., who during qualifying once again offered up what has now become his weekly "I'm ready to retire" moment. Listen to this.
Felt like race trim, dude. Sorry. I suck.
Someone who did not suck at the Charlotte Roval during qualifying this past weekend was Shane Van Gisbergen. He won both poles. I have to say SVG impresses me almost every weekend with something he does, whether it's his qualifying, his race, or something he says. I just think this guy is a true asset to our sport and look forward to seeing what he can do in 2025. Moving on to the Xfinity Series race, and from the start of the race, I was focused on the radio of Parker Kligerman, because I knew with his recent announcement that he won't be racing full-time in 2025, that the Roval race could have been his last one as a playoff competitor. I had no idea it would turn into the crazy storyline that it did. However, before that last lap drama, there was more drama in the final stage when the number 48 driver struggled with his team radio.
The other radio on, guys. Did we turn the other radio on?
I don't know what we're supposed to do. We can't talk to him. Caution. The front's totally flat spotted. I gotta figure out this fucking radio. God damn it! Okay, listen.
Turn the other radio on and flip the switch.
Hey, talk to me. This radio's totally fucked.
Did you go to the second radio, Parker? Turn the other one on and flip the switch.
Got me here? Yeah, we got you. Better. Yeah, the other one turned itself to 1,000 and it won't figure it out. Sorry to scream at you, but that radio went to like max blast. When you guys would talk, I literally was pouring in my ears.
If I'm being honest, when I heard him talking about the radio turning itself up, I couldn't help but think of Dale Jr.'s similar experience last month at Bristol. Moving on to the end of the race and the unfortunate situation that happened. It's unfortunate because it just didn't need to happen. If you go back and watch the replay, the NBC broadcast showed Leland Honeyman buried in the tires, and it was more than 15 seconds later, 15 seconds before NASCAR put out the caution, which also happened to be the moment the number 48 was about to cross the finish line. If NASCAR puts out the caution like a normal situation within, say, 5 seconds of it happening, Kligerman would have no doubt still been disappointed, but it would have been less painful because it would have completely avoided the confusion and speculation of whether or not he'd crossed the finish line before the yellow light illuminated. Confusion and speculation that was all totally unnecessary, because NASCAR doesn't have a simple process to let fans immediately know the situation. There's a delay in the light flashing, which Jeff Burton shared his strong thoughts about it.
We got to get this fixed. I'm sorry. As a fan, I should see a light and say that's it. There should not have to go back and say, well, wait a minute, there's a timestamp. It needs to make sense, and it needs to be simple to observe.
Steve Letarte said it needs to be like the basketball shot clock, where you see the backboard light up red and you know it's either touching the shooter's fingers or the shot has been released. I agree that something like that needs to be done. Anything is better than what we currently have. Unfortunately, this wasn't NASCAR's only blunder for the weekend. Moving on to Sunday's Cup Series race, and remember how I talked about Kyle Busch and Martin Truex Jr.'s comments during practice and qualifying? The two also offered some headline-making remarks when they met with the media on Saturday. Truex saying that the violent ride over the bigger turtles on the front stretch chicane was causing concussions. Busch agreed. Before the race on Sunday, NASCAR announced it had reduced the turtles from 4 inches to 2.5 inches. When the green flag fell, SVG got a good launch from the pole and jumped out to the early lead. Someone else got a good launch early in the race, Alex Bowman. Take a look at this.
Alex Bowman, here's the 48. Keep your eye on the Ally Chevy. Whoa! Wow.
More on this Dukes of Hazzard moment in a bit. Interestingly, the front stretch chicane was the scene of NASCAR's second big blunder for the weekend, when on lap 12, officials ruled that Bubba Wallace had shortcut the corner. Now, before I show you what he did, I want to first show you the video that the drivers watched in the drivers' meeting before the race, and the specific rule that applies to this situation.
You will be judged as missing or shortcutting any turn previously described when all 4 tires are on the non-track side of the red and white rumble strips that define the apex of the turns.
Now, here's what Wallace did and what he had to say about it.
So basically, these tires have to touch this area. They have to stay on the red and white, your left side tires. Once they get too far off the racetrack, once you can see that blue curbing between the red and white curbing, that is clearly a shortcut for Bubba Wallace.
Looking to make calls over there, and I'll give him a chance.
I have no fucking idea where to run, so sorry, but fucking bullshit.
He was understandably upset, but clearly was in the wrong. What Wallace didn't know was 2 cars behind him, William Byron did the exact same thing. All 4 tires were inside the red and white area. But take a listen to the NBC broadcast and focus specifically on who Jeff Burton is talking about.
And I got to tell you, Brad Keselowski behind him did a great job of not making the same mistake. Because of that lack of vision, Brad had a really good sense of awareness, and he didn't do the same thing.
Listen, I get it. Brad Keselowski is the car right behind Wallace and does deserve credit for not following the 23 and getting a penalty. But how could Burton have not seen that William Byron committed the same violation literally a second later? It was totally puzzling that A, NASCAR didn't call a penalty on the number 24, and B, the NBC broadcast booth not only avoided talking about the HMS car's move, but instead focused on what the RFK racing car did. I know I give Fox a lot of grief for their coverage, and justifiably so, but NBC messed up big time on this one. I remember Kevin Harvick saying last week on his Happy Hour podcast about NASCAR being consistently inconsistent while talking about the towing policy and the damaged vehicle policy debacle at Talladega. Sadly, those words ring true for the sanctioning body again at the Roval. not only with the indecision on Wallace and Byron in Sunday's race, but what happened at the end of Saturday's Xfinity Series race. So very frustrating. Back to the race, and SVG led the first 21 laps until pitting before the end of the stage. Tyler Reddick was the beneficiary and won that first stage. He was followed by Joey Logano, Chase Elliott, Ryan Blaney, and Kyle Larson. In that second stage, we had a chance to get a closer look at the new Turn 7 and what I viewed as Calamity Corner. I call it that because it totally reminds me of another Calamity Corner, Turn 1 at COTA. While there were multiple incidents in that hairpin throughout the day, the biggest playoff-affecting incident came in Stage 2 when Tyler Reddick came in hot and got into his 2311 Racing team co-owner Denny Hamlin. The contact so hard that it lifted the rear wheels of the number 45 off the ground. That hit and subsequent damage put Reddick and his team behind the 8-ball for the rest of the day. Kyle Larson took the lead to start Stage 2 and, like SVG, never relinquished it until he decided to pit before the end of the stage, allowing his teammate Alex Bowman to win. He was followed by Van Gisbergen, Logano, Elliott, and Bubba Wallace. During that stage break, the team radios of the playoff drivers began heating up, with crew chiefs and drivers discussing their positions and how they stacked up against the playoff contenders. I was listening to the number 9 radio and found it interesting how crew chief Alan Gustafson took charge.
Plus 11 of the 22, plus 4 on the 45 as points scored right now. Where is the 45 here? So 11's 2 points in front of us, 48's 8 points in front of us, 12 is 9 points in front of us.
I think the gist of it, Chase, the 22 is only a few points ahead of you, and he can only gain one more spot on the track. You can gain a lot here, so Alan can fill you in on the rest.
Just let me talk to him, please. 45 is 36, just pit. Last car on the lead lap. So we need to get within 11 spots of the 22 and stay in front of the 45. And or get in front of 2 spots in front of 11, 7 spots in front of the 48, etc., etc. It's all right there. It's all good.
In that third and final stage, I was really intrigued to see the number 54 of Ty Gibbs pulling into the garage early due to mechanical issues. Why do I care since he's not a playoff driver? Because I've kept tabs on JGR mechanical issues this season. That was the 5th time a JGR car has suffered some sort of mechanical failure this year, and all of them have happened in the last 18 races. First it was Seabell at Gateway, Denny Hamlin a week later at Sonoma, Gibbs had his first issue at Pocono, and Martin Truex Jr. had an engine failure at Richmond. Now this. I know in August, after Truex's problem, TRD made a statement suggesting it was working to identify the issues and resolve them. Sounds like there's still quite a bit of work that needs to be done. In that final stage, AJ Allmendinger led those first few laps before Kyle Larson reclaimed the lead with 43 to go. It was clear that the number 5 was the best car and destined for victory barring any self-inflicted mistake. The biggest storyline developing was who was going to move on to the round of 8. It was basically a battle between Joey Logano and Tyler Reddick, with the former ahead of the latter. However, the whole dynamic between the two cars changed with 28 laps to go when Austin Dillon lost the wheel and brought out a caution. During that yellow, the number 45 team opted to give up track position to come down pit road and take new tires. It was a move that would pay off in a big way. Over the final 20 or so laps, I listened to the radios of both Logano and Reddick, but I have to say listening to the number 22 radio, you totally got a sense of the helplessness and how it was all slipping away. Take a listen.
We're 8 above the cut line right now, 8 above. Excuse me, it updated at 7 above, 7 above. Reddick's making passes, you're 6 above the cut line. Reddick just got another one, your gap's 4 points above the cut line, 5 points behind Denny. Eyes forward. Now it's 3 above the cut line. Reddick just made another pass, 3 above the cut. All right, you had a car spin, so we're 2 points above the cut line here. 2 points above the cut line. All right, Reddick just got another spot. We're 1 point above the cut line. 1 point. We do hold the tiebreaker on the 45. We do hold a tiebreaker. All right, we are tied. We hold the tiebreaker. All right, Reddick just passed Truex and right behind Denny, so you're out by 1 right now. Out by 1. Gap's 5. Reddick just got around Denny. You're out by 2.
In the end, It was a combination of Reddick gaining spots and Logano losing spots that resulted with the regular season champion advancing to the round of 8. Logano was eliminated, or so we thought. After the race, NASCAR surprisingly announced that the number 48 of Alex Bowman had been disqualified because the car was too light on the scales. Here's what Cup Series Managing Director Brad Moran had to say about it.
Yeah, so unfortunately when we were running the 48 through, it didn't pass the minimum weight specs. So we pulled the car off to the side and we allowed them to fuel it, which they already did. We let them fuel it again. We let them run the pumps to make sure all the pickup boxes were full. We give the teams every opportunity to try to meet the minimum weight. We also have to plug in the water and run the water through the system to make sure they're full of water. And then we rescaled it. It still didn't meet the weight. We backed it off and we run it across one more time just to confirm the weights were accurate. And unfortunately, they did not meet the minimum weight. They are allowed a 0.5% of a weight break, which is about 17 pounds, give or take. That is what they're allowed, and it was more than that.
You can't help but feel for Bowman. To start the playoffs, he was unexpectedly rumored to be out of his HMS ride in 2025, which he responded to those questions on Playoff Media Day. But then he answered that question more definitively by his actions on the track. Over the first 5 races in the playoffs, only Seabell of all the Cup drivers had a better average finishing position of 7.2. Bowman was 10.8 with finishes at 5th at Atlanta, 18th at the Glen, 9th at Bristol, 6th at Kansas, and 16th at Talladega. He slotted in 18th at the Roval before the DQ. Speculation is swirling about what might have caused Bowman's car to be light and if he might have lost something in that early jump. I was listening to the PRN broadcast right after the race, and I thought it was interesting to hear the HMS driver talk about what happened.
Yeah, I mean, lap 2, I about ended up in row 5 of the grandstands there over that turtle. So glad we didn't break anything there.
Or did he break anything? And if so, is that potentially what caused his car to be too light? At this point, it's unclear what happens next, if HMS appeals or not. Somehow, that DQ oddly feels like an appropriate ending to a wild weekend at Charlotte Motor Speedway that included a couple of cutoff races and a couple of controversies. Or, as NASCAR fans have come to know it, just another weekend at the racetrack. All right, guys, that's a wrap on today's episode. I want to hear what you thought about it. Specifically, let's go back to Saturday, and I first want to get your thoughts on Jeff Burton's comment on Riley Herbst being the most improved driver over the last few seasons. Agree or disagree? If you disagree, who do you think has been better? Also on Saturday, what did you think of the Xfinity Series race and that heartbreaking finish for Parker Kligerman and NASCAR's handling of that late caution? Moving on to Sunday, a couple of things. First, what did you think about the Bubba Wallace penalty and how William Byron avoided the same fate despite doing the same thing? And what Jeff Burton had to say about all of it? And what do you make of the 5th JGR car suffering a mechanical failure this year? Is there more problems looming ahead in the playoffs? And lastly, with Bowman's elimination due to disqualification, do you think this is the life that Joey Logano needed, and can he mount a charge in the final 4 races? I'm a big believer in fate and things happening for a reason, so I guess we'll see how it plays out for the 2-time champ in the next 4 weeks. Thank you for watching this video, and thanks as always for supporting the channel. I really do appreciate it and hope you have a great rest of your day.